Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our presentation today. Our first slide introduces the topic, reproduction in plants. Today, we'll explore how plants reproduce, the processes involved, and why it's so important for life on Earth. So, let's dive in and discover the fascinating world of plant reproduction together. Welcome to our overview of plant biology. On this slide, we're looking at the table of contents for the topics we'll cover today. First, we'll explore plant parts, starting with roots and stems, which are essential for support and nutrient absorption. Then, we'll dive into reproduction in plants, focusing on both sexual and asexual methods. For sexual reproduction, we'll look at processes like pollination, fertilization, and how fruits and seeds form. We'll also discuss seed dispersal, which is key for spreading plants to new areas. Moving on, we'll examine various reproductive techniques, including artificial methods like tissue culture and layering, which are important for plant propagation. Lastly, we'll cover agents of pollination, like insects and wind, and how they facilitate reproduction. All these points connect to our larger goal of understanding how plants grow, reproduce, and spread, which is fundamental to both agriculture and ecology. Let's take a closer look at plant parts. Understanding the different parts of a plant is essential because each one plays a specific role in the plant's survival and growth. For example, the roots anchor the plant in the soil and absorb water and nutrients. The stem provides support and acts as a highway for transporting nutrients and water between the roots and leaves. The leaves are the main site for photosynthesis, where the plant makes its food using sunlight. And of course, the flowers are important for reproduction, producing seeds that will grow into new plants. Recognizing these parts helps us appreciate how plants function as a whole, which ties into our overall theme of understanding plant biology and their importance in our environment. Let's take a closer look at plant parts. Understanding the different parts of a plant is essential because each part plays a vital role in the plant's survival and growth. We have roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and sometimes fruits. The roots are like the plant's anchor. They hold it in place and absorb water and nutrients from the soil. The stem acts as a support structure, allowing the plant to stand upright and transport these nutrients and water to different parts. Leaves are the plant's food factories. They use sunlight to produce energy through a process called photosynthesis. Flowers are not just pretty, they're crucial for reproduction, helping the plant produce seeds. And sometimes, these seeds develop into fruits, which protect the seeds and help in their dispersal. Recognizing these parts helps us appreciate how plants grow and thrive, which ties into our overall understanding of plant biology and their importance to life on Earth. Let's take a closer look at reproduction in plants. This is a fascinating process that ensures the survival of plant species across generations. Plants have developed both sexual and asexual methods of reproduction, which allows them to adapt to different environments and conditions. In sexual reproduction, plants reproduce through the production of seeds, which develop from fertilized ovules. This process involves the transfer of pollen from the male parts of a flower to the female parts, often with the help of wind, insects, or other animals. The fertilization then leads to seed formation, which contains the genetic information of both parent plants. On the other hand, many plants are also capable of asexual reproduction, which doesn't involve seeds or fertilization. Instead, new plants can grow from parts of the parent plant, such as roots, stems, or leaves. This method allows for rapid propagation and ensures that the new plants are genetically identical to the parent. Understanding these reproductive strategies is key to appreciating how plants adapt and thrive in diverse environments. It also highlights the importance of plant reproduction in agriculture, conservation, and ecosystems overall. So, as we continue, keep in mind how these processes connect to the broader themes of growth, adaptation, and sustainability in the plant kingdom. Reproduction in plants is a fascinating process, and it's essentially how plants produce new young ones, or offspring, from their parents. It's a vital part of their life cycle because it ensures the continuation of the species. When we talk about reproduction, we're referring to the way plants create new plants, which can happen in different ways. Some plants reproduce sexually, involving flowers, pollination, and seeds, while others can reproduce asexually, without the need for seeds. Understanding this process helps us see how plants grow, spread, and survive in various environments. It's also important for agriculture and gardening, where we often want to encourage healthy reproduction. So, in essence, reproduction in plants is about creating new life, keeping the cycle going, and maintaining the diversity of plant life around us. Let's take a closer look at reproduction in plants. First, we have asexual reproduction, where only a single parent is involved. This process can happen through simple division of the plant's body into two or more parts, or by forming spores. It's a quick way for plants to reproduce without the need for another organism. Next is vegetative reproduction, which is a bit different. Here, a cell, tissue, or even a part of a plant's organ can develop into a completely new plant. It's like nature's way of cloning itself, ensuring the growth of new plants from existing parts. Lastly, we have sexual reproduction. This involves two parents, where male and female gametes come together and fuse to form a zygote. This zygote then develops into a seed. This process increases genetic diversity, which is vital for the adaptation and survival of plant species. Understanding these different methods helps us appreciate how plants reproduce and thrive in various environments. Today, let's talk about asexual reproduction. This is a fascinating process where an organism can produce offspring without involving another organism or the process of gamete fusion. Essentially, the organism creates a copy of itself, which is genetically identical. It's a quick and efficient way for organisms to reproduce, especially in stable environments where the parent's traits are already well suited for survival. One key point to highlight is that asexual reproduction doesn't require a partner, which makes it advantageous in situations where mates are scarce or conditions are rapidly changing. You'll find this process in many organisms, from bacteria to some plants and even certain animals. This method connects to our overall theme because it underscores the diversity of reproductive strategies in the natural world. It shows how life adapts to different conditions, ensuring survival and continuity without the need for complex reproductive processes. Asexual reproduction is a fascinating process where new plants are formed from the cells of a single parent. Essentially, it means that the plant can produce offspring without needing a partner or another plant. This process is quite efficient because it allows for rapid propagation, especially in favorable conditions. The key idea here is that all the new plants are genetically identical to the parent plant, which can be beneficial for maintaining desirable traits. This method of reproduction is important in agriculture and horticulture because it helps us reproduce plants with specific characteristics quickly and reliably. Overall, understanding asexual reproduction helps us appreciate how some plants can thrive and spread even in the absence of pollination or seed formation. Budding is a fascinating form of asexual reproduction where a small bulb-like outgrowth, called a bud, forms on the parent cell. This bud gradually develops and eventually becomes an independent organism. It's quite a remarkable process because it allows the organism to reproduce without the need for fertilization or genetic exchange. An excellent example of budding is yeast. In yeast, the bud forms on the parent cell, grows, and then separates to form a new, genetically identical yeast cell. This method of reproduction is efficient and helps organisms like yeast rapidly multiply in suitable environments. Overall, budding highlights the diversity of reproductive strategies in the living world, especially among simpler organisms. Let's take a look at fragmentation, which is one of the interesting methods of asexual reproduction. In this process, the adult organism actually breaks apart into two or more pieces, and these pieces are called fragments. What's fascinating is that each of these fragments has the potential to grow into a completely new, independent plant. So essentially, the organism is splitting itself up, and those parts can develop into new organisms. For example, in algae, we see this happen with species like Spirogyra and Fucus. These algae can break into fragments naturally, and those fragments will grow into new algae. This method of reproduction is especially important because it allows the organism to rapidly increase its numbers and colonize new areas. It's a simple yet effective strategy, and it really highlights the diversity of ways plants and algae can reproduce. It also connects to our overall theme of understanding different reproductive strategies in the plant kingdom. Now, let's talk about spore formation. In this process, parent plants produce tiny, often microscopic bodies that can be single-celled or multi-celled and spherical in shape. These spores are quite resilient and can remain dormant until conditions are just right for growth. When the environment becomes favorable, like the right level of moisture, temperature, and light, they germinate and develop into new plants. A couple of classic examples of plants that reproduce this way are ferns and mosses. These plants rely heavily on spores for their reproduction, which allows them to spread across areas and colonize new spaces efficiently. Understanding spore formation is a key piece of the overall picture of plant reproduction, especially for non-flowering plants. It highlights how diverse and adaptable plant reproductive strategies can be, enabling them to survive and thrive in a variety of environments. Let's talk about vegetative reproduction. This is a form of asexual reproduction where new plants grow from parts of the parent plant, rather than from seeds. It's a natural way for plants to quickly colonize an area and maintain their genetic makeup. Key methods include runner or stolon development, where horizontal stems produce new plants at nodes. Rhizomes, which are underground stems, also serve as a means for vegetative propagation. Additionally, tubers like potatoes are classic examples. What's fascinating is that this method allows plants to reproduce efficiently without the need for pollination or seed production. Connecting this to the broader theme, vegetative reproduction highlights how plants can adapt and thrive through various reproductive strategies, ensuring their survival across different environments. Today, I want to talk about vegetative reproduction in plants. Essentially, this is a form of asexual reproduction where plants use their own parts, like roots, stems, or leaves, to produce new plants. It's a fascinating process because, unlike seed-based reproduction, it allows plants to clone themselves quickly and efficiently. For example, some plants can grow new roots from a stem or leaf that has fallen off, leading to a whole new plant. This method is especially useful in nature and agriculture because it helps plants spread and establish themselves without the need for pollination or seed production. It really highlights the versatility and adaptability of plants in reproducing and thriving in their environments, tying into our overall theme of plant survival strategies. Today, let's explore vegetative reproduction, which is a natural method plants use to reproduce without seeds. It mainly involves parts of the plant like roots, stems, and leaves. For example, roots can produce new plants directly, which is quite fascinating. Stems also play a big role. They include structures like rhizomes, bulbs, tubers, and corms, all of which have the ability to generate new plants. Leaves, in some cases, can also give rise to new plants under the right conditions. Now, moving on to artificial methods. These are human-assisted techniques to propagate plants more quickly or reliably. Cutting is one of the simplest. You take a piece of stem or leaf and plant it to grow a new plant. Grafting involves joining parts of two plants so they grow as one, which is especially useful for fruit trees. Layering is another technique where a stem is encouraged to root while still attached to the parent plant. Lastly, tissue culture allows us to grow plants from tiny tissue samples in a lab setting, enabling mass propagation of desirable plants. All these methods highlight how versatile and resourceful plant reproduction can be, whether occurring naturally or through human intervention. They're essential tools in agriculture and horticulture, helping us produce healthy, vigorous plants efficiently. Let's now turn our attention to the roots, which are fundamental to understanding the foundation of this topic. When we talk about roots, we're really discussing the origins, the core principles and ideas that shape everything else. They provide stability and context, helping us see how past experiences and initial concepts influence our current practices. Recognizing these roots allows us to appreciate the evolution and the reasons behind certain approaches. By understanding where these ideas originate, we can make more informed decisions moving forward and ensure that our strategies remain grounded in solid principles. So, appreciating the roots isn't just about history. It's about strengthening our overall understanding and application of the subject at hand. Let's talk about roots, specifically tuberous roots, which are fascinating adaptations found in some plants. For example, dahlia, sweet potato, and asparagus all develop tuberous roots. These specialized roots serve as storage organs, allowing the plants to store nutrients and energy underground. This adaptation is especially useful for surviving unfavorable conditions, like drought or winter. When we look at these plants, we see how tuberous roots are key to their survival and propagation. Recognizing these structures helps us understand how plants adapt their root systems to their environment, supporting the overall theme of plant diversity and resilience. Let's dive into stems. Stems are a crucial part of the plant's structure because they support the plant and serve as a transportation highway. They carry water, nutrients, and sugars between the roots and leaves, making them essential for the plant's survival. Stems can vary quite a bit in shape, size, and function depending on the plant type. For example, some stems are woody, like in trees, providing strength and support, while others are softer, like in herbs. Understanding stems helps us see how plants grow and adapt to their environments. They play a key role in overall plant health and productivity, linking the roots to the leaves where photosynthesis happens. So, in the context of our overall discussion, recognizing the importance of stems helps us appreciate how plants are structured to thrive and how they can be cultivated or managed effectively. Let's talk about stems now, which are actually one of the most common methods used for vegetative propagation. These stems have the amazing ability to produce new plants, making them very important in both nature and agriculture. There are different kinds of stems used for this purpose. First, we have runners, which are horizontal stems that grow along the ground. You might be familiar with plants like oxalis or even grass. Both use runners to spread and multiply quickly. Next, there are rhizomes, which are underground stems. Think of ginger, turmeric, or even bananas. They all grow from rhizomes that store nutrients and help the plant spread. Then we have bulbs, which are underground stems encased in fleshy leaves. Onions and tulips are great examples of plants that grow from bulbs. Other types include tubers, which are swollen underground stems like potatoes, and corms, which are solid, swollen underground stems like those found in crocuses. All these different kinds of stems are crucial for vegetative propagation because they allow plants to reproduce efficiently without seeds, often giving them an advantage in stable environments or when quick reproduction is needed. So, understanding these various stem types helps us grasp how plants can multiply and survive in diverse conditions. Let's talk about runners. Horizontal stems, which are called runners, will grow along the surface or just beneath the soil. These runners will produce new roots at the nodes, which are the points where leaves or shoots are attached. Once the roots develop, shoots start to grow upwards from these nodes, eventually forming new plants. This process happens quite frequently, allowing the plant to spread and propagate rapidly. For example, plants like chrysanthemum and mint utilize this method of asexual reproduction through runners. This is an efficient way for these plants to colonize an area quickly and ensure their survival. So, the key takeaway here is that runners are a form of vegetative propagation that helps certain plants spread by producing new plants from horizontal stems. It ties into our overall theme of how plants can reproduce and adapt in their environments. Now, let's take a closer look at the underground stem. This type of stem is quite fascinating because it plays a crucial role in the plant's survival and growth. Essentially, an underground stem is a stem that grows below the soil's surface, serving as a storage and survival structure. It helps the plant withstand adverse conditions like drought or cold, since it's protected underground. One of the key points to remember is that underground stems are not just storage organs, they also facilitate vegetative reproduction. Many plants can propagate through these stems, which means new plants can grow from parts of the underground stem itself. Some common examples include bulbs, tubers, rhizomes, and stolons. Each of these has unique features, but shares the common purpose of helping the plant survive and spread. This concept ties back to our overall theme of plant adaptations and survival strategies. The underground stem exemplifies how plants have evolved to optimize resource storage and reproduction, ensuring their persistence across different environments. Let's take a closer look at bulbs. When we think about bulbs, we're really talking about the foundation of many plants. They serve as storage organs that contain nutrients, which help the plant survive through adverse conditions like winter or drought. This is what makes bulbs such a resilient and reliable choice for gardeners. Most bulbs are composed of a few key parts: the bulb itself, which is underground, the scales that store food, and the shoots that emerge when it's time to grow. Understanding these components helps us appreciate how bulbs function and why they're so effective for certain plants. One of the most important points to remember is that bulbs are energy reservoirs. They store nutrients during dormancy and then use that energy to produce new growth when conditions are favorable. This ability to wait until the right moment to grow is a big reason why bulbs are so popular in landscaping. They can be planted in one season and bloom reliably year after year. Connecting this to our overall theme, bulbs exemplify the idea of resilience and sustainable growth. They remind us that proper planning and understanding of a plant's life cycle can lead to beautiful, low-maintenance landscapes. So, in essence, bulbs are more than just pretty flowers. They're a testament to nature's clever design for survival and renewal. Now, let's talk about tubers. These are a special type of plant structure where buds in the eyes of the tuber can actually give rise to new plants. It's like a natural cloning process, where each eye has the potential to grow into a new, independent plant. For example, a potato is a classic case of a tuber. When you plant a potato, you're essentially planting a storage organ that already contains these buds, ready to sprout and grow into a new plant. This method of propagation is quite efficient and is widely used in agriculture because it allows for the rapid multiplication of plants from a single tuber. So, in essence, tubers are not just food storage organs, they're also a clever way for plants to reproduce and spread. Let's take a closer look at how leaves can also serve as a means of vegetative reproduction. On the edges of leaves, plants develop small buds called adventitious buds. These buds are special because they have the potential to grow into new plants. When these buds come into contact with the soil, they can develop roots and start a whole new plant independently. A great example of this is bryophyllum. You might have seen how these plants produce new shoots from the margins of their leaves. This ability allows the plant to quickly propagate and spread, especially in favorable conditions. So, in the context of the overall theme today, this is another fascinating way plants utilize their parts, like leaves, to reproduce and ensure their survival and growth. It's a clever adaptation that highlights the diversity of plant reproductive strategies. Now, let's take a closer look at artificial methods. These are techniques that rely on human-made processes or tools to achieve specific outcomes. They are essential because they often allow us to control variables more precisely and can be applied in situations where natural methods might not be feasible. For example, in engineering, artificial methods can include simulations or synthetic materials designed to mimic natural properties. The key point here is that artificial methods are designed to supplement or even replace natural ones when needed. They connect to the overall theme by highlighting how innovation and technology expand our capabilities beyond what nature alone can provide. So, understanding these methods helps us appreciate the role of human ingenuity in advancing our field. Now, let's take a look at some artificial methods used in plant propagation, specifically cutting and grafting. Cutting is a straightforward technique where we take a piece of a plant, like a stem or a leaf, and plant it to grow a new, independent plant. It's a popular method because it's simple and effective for many species. Grafting, on the other hand, involves joining two different plants together so they grow as one. Typically, we attach a desirable variety, called the scion, onto the rootstock of another plant. This method allows us to combine the best traits of both plants, like disease resistance from the rootstock and fruit quality from the scion. Both of these artificial methods are vital tools in horticulture, enabling us to propagate plants efficiently and maintain desirable characteristics, which ties back to our overall theme of innovative propagation techniques. Let's talk about layering and tissue culture today. These are fascinating techniques that play a crucial role in plant propagation and research. Layering involves encouraging a branch or stem to develop roots while still attached to the parent plant, which makes it easier to produce new plants with the same characteristics. It's a natural method, but it can be enhanced with proper techniques. Tissue culture, on the other hand, is a more modern, highly controlled process. It allows us to grow plants from very small tissue samples in a sterile environment. This method is powerful because it enables rapid multiplication of plants, preservation of rare species, and even genetic modification. Both layering and tissue culture are essential tools in horticulture and agriculture, helping us improve crop yields, conserve genetic diversity, and develop new plant varieties. They connect to the overall theme of innovative propagation techniques that support sustainable and efficient plant production. Let's take a closer look at layering and tissue culture. These techniques are fundamental in plant propagation and research. Layering involves encouraging a stem to develop roots while still attached to the parent plant, which is a natural way to propagate plants that are difficult to root from cuttings. It's a simple yet effective method. Tissue culture, on the other hand, is a more advanced technique where we grow plants from very small tissue samples in a controlled environment. This method allows us to produce large numbers of plants rapidly and ensure genetic uniformity. Both methods highlight the importance of understanding plant physiology and exploiting it for propagation. They connect directly to our overall theme of efficient and sustainable plant production. By mastering these techniques, we can improve crop yields, conserve rare species, and support agricultural innovation. Let's talk about sexual reproduction now. This process is essential for creating genetic diversity within a species. It involves the combination of genetic material from two parent organisms, which results in offspring that are genetically different from both parents. This diversity is crucial for adaptation and survival over time. During sexual reproduction, sperm and egg cells, also known as gametes, are produced through a process called meiosis. When these gametes fuse during fertilization, they form a new organism with a unique set of genes. This process not only ensures the continuation of a species, but also promotes variation, which helps populations adapt to changing environments. Overall, sexual reproduction is a fundamental concept that ties into the bigger picture of biological diversity and evolution. Let's talk about sexual reproduction in plants. This process involves the formation of new plants through the fusion of male and female gametes. It's a key way that plants reproduce and pass on their traits. Specifically, in flowering plants, this process is carried out with the help of flowers, which serve as the reproductive organs. You can think of flowers as the plant's way of facilitating reproduction, bringing the male and female parts together. Understanding this process is important because it highlights how plants produce offspring that are genetically diverse, ensuring their survival and adaptation in different environments. So, in essence, flowers play a crucial role in the sexual reproduction of plants, connecting the dots between the plant's reproductive system and the continuation of the species. Let's take a closer look at complete or bisexual flowers. These types of flowers contain both male and female reproductive cells, which means they have the potential to reproduce on their own, although cross-pollination is also common. It's important to note that complete flowers have all four main parts: sepals, petals, stamens, and pistils. Each part plays a vital role in the flower's reproductive process. The sepals protect the developing bud, while the petals attract pollinators with their colors and scents. The stamens are the male parts, producing pollen, and the pistils are the female parts, where the ovules are located. Having all these parts in one flower makes it complete, which is an efficient way for plants to reproduce. Understanding these features helps us see how flowers are well designed for reproduction, whether they self-pollinate or cross-pollinate, and highlights the diversity and complexity of plant reproductive strategies. In this slide, we're looking at flowers that are either incomplete or unisexual. These types of flowers contain only one type of reproductive cell, meaning they are either male or female. For example, in some plants like papaya and corn, You'll find flowers that are male, with only pollen-producing parts, or female, with only ovule-producing parts. Similarly, hibiscus and citrus plants typically have unisexual flowers as well. Recognizing these differences helps us understand how plants reproduce and how they might depend on pollinators or other mechanisms to achieve fertilization. This concept ties into the overall theme of plant reproduction, showing the diversity in flower structures and reproductive strategies. Today, let's take a closer look at the pistil, which is the female organ of the flower. The pistil is actually made up of three main parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. The stigma is the sticky top part where pollen lands and begins the process of fertilization. Beneath that, we have the style, which acts as a sort of pathway guiding the pollen down to the ovary. The ovary is particularly important because it produces the female cells, or gametes, which are essential for the development of a new plant. Understanding the structure of the pistil helps us see how flowers facilitate reproduction, tying into the larger themes of plant biology and life cycles. Now, let's take a closer look at the stamens, which are the male organs of a flower. The key part of the stamen is the anther, and that's where the pollen grains are produced. These pollen grains are really important because they contain the male cells, or gametes, which are necessary for fertilization. So, in essence, the stamens are responsible for generating the pollen that will eventually fertilize the female part of the flower. Understanding this helps us see how plants reproduce and pass on their genetic material. It's a fascinating process that highlights the intricate ways plants ensure their survival and propagation. Let's talk about pollination. Pollination is a crucial part of the process that allows plants to reproduce and thrive. It involves transferring pollen from the male part of a flower to the female part, which then leads to seed production. This process can happen in many different ways, but most commonly, it's facilitated by bees, butterflies, birds, and even the wind. What's really fascinating is how interconnected this process is with the health of ecosystems and agriculture. Many of the fruits, vegetables, and nuts we rely on depend heavily on pollinators. Without them, food production would be severely impacted. So, understanding pollination isn't just about plants. It's about maintaining biodiversity and food security. It highlights how vital it is to protect pollinator populations and their habitats, especially as they face challenges like habitat loss and pesticides. This connects back to our overall theme of sustainability and the importance of caring for our environment. By supporting pollination, we're supporting the entire web of life that sustains us all. Let's talk about pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther, which is the male part of the flower, to the stigma, the female part. This process is crucial because it's the first step in forming seeds. Without pollination, seed production can't begin, so it's fundamental to plant reproduction and the continuation of plant species. As we move through the presentation, keep in mind how vital this process is in the larger picture of plant life cycles and the role of pollinators like bees and wind. Understanding pollination helps us appreciate the intricate ways plants reproduce and sustain ecosystems. Let's explore the two main types of pollination. First, we have self-pollination. This occurs when pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. Essentially, the flower fertilizes itself, which can be beneficial for plants in stable environments or when pollinators are scarce. Next, we have cross-pollination. In this case, pollen grains are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same species, but on a different plant. Cross-pollination promotes genetic diversity, which is crucial for the health and adaptability of plant populations. Understanding these two types helps us see how plants reproduce and how they ensure their survival in different environments. Each method has its own advantages and plays a vital role in the overall health of plant ecosystems. Let's talk about the agents of pollination. These are the various organisms that help transfer pollen from one flower to another, which is essential for plant reproduction. The most obvious agents are animals, especially insects like bees, butterflies, and beetles. Bees, in particular, are incredibly important because they are so efficient at pollinating many crops and wild plants. Butterflies add to this process with their delicate visits, while beetles, often overlooked, also contribute significantly in certain ecosystems. Beyond insects, other animals such as birds, like hummingbirds, play a key role, especially in plants that have adapted to attract them with bright colors and nectar. Bats are also important pollinators in some regions, particularly for plants that bloom at night. But pollination isn't just about animals. Wind is a major agent as well, especially for grasses and many trees. These plants produce lightweight pollen that can be carried over long distances by the wind, facilitating reproduction without animal involvement. Understanding these agents is crucial because they form the foundation of many ecosystems and agricultural systems. Their activity ensures the production of fruits, seeds, and new plants, which in turn supports biodiversity and food security. Recognizing the diversity and importance of pollination agents ties back to the overall theme of the interconnectedness of life and the importance of preserving these natural processes. Today, let's talk about wind as a method of pollination. Wind plays a crucial role by carrying pollen grains from the anthers of one flower to the stigma of another. Unlike other pollination methods, wind tends to work best with certain types of flowers that have specific features. These flowers are usually small, not brightly colored, and they don't produce nectar, which means they don't attract insects or animals. You'll often see this process in crops like wheat, rice, and maize. These plants rely heavily on wind to transfer pollen, making their flowers well suited for this method. Now, let's look at the pollen grains themselves. They're very light, which helps them be carried over long distances by the wind. Additionally, they're produced in large quantities, increasing the chances of successful pollination. So, in essence, wind pollination depends on these specialized flower features and the lightweight, abundant pollen grains to ensure the plants can reproduce efficiently without relying on animals or insects. This method is a perfect example of how nature adapts different strategies for reproductive success. Water plays a fascinating role in plant reproduction. When pollen grains are released into the water, they can be carried away by water currents to reach other flowers. This is an effective way for aquatic plants to pollinate, especially since they often grow separated by some distance. For example, aquatic plants like sea grass and Vallisneria rely on water for pollination. This method highlights how different environments shape unique reproductive strategies, and it ties into the larger theme of how plants adapt to their specific habitats to ensure survival and reproduction. Insects play a crucial role in pollination, and they visit flowers primarily to collect nectar, which serves as their food source. As they move from one flower to another, some pollen grains stick to their bodies, especially on their legs, bodies, and even their heads. When these insects visit a new flower, those pollen grains are transferred onto the stigma, which is the part of the flower responsible for receiving pollen. This transfer is essential for fertilization and the production of seeds. Now, let's talk about the features of flowers that attract these insects. Many flowers have a sweet smell and brightly colored petals, like roses and sunflowers, that are especially appealing to insects active during the day, or diurnal insects. On the other hand, flowers like jasmine and cacti have white or light green petals that are more visible and attractive to nocturnal insects, which are active at night. These flowers are also rich in nectar, providing a vital energy source for visiting insects. Moving on to pollen grains, it's important to note that they are sticky. This stickiness is a key feature because it allows pollen to adhere easily to the insect's body as they forage for nectar. This sticky nature ensures that pollen can be effectively transferred from one flower to another, supporting successful pollination. So, in essence, the combination of flower features, like color, scent, and nectar, and the sticky nature of pollen grains creates an efficient system for pollination, which is fundamental for plant reproduction. Let's talk about fertilization. Fertilization is a crucial step in the reproductive process, where the sperm and egg come together. It's fascinating because this is where the genetic material from both parents combines to create a new organism. This process not only triggers the development of the embryo, but also ensures that the offspring inherits a mix of traits from both parents. Understanding fertilization helps us appreciate how life continues and how genetic diversity is maintained. It highlights the importance of reproductive health and the complex mechanisms involved in conception. So, as we go through this presentation, keep in mind how fertilization is the foundation for all subsequent development and growth. Let's talk about fertilization, which is a crucial step in plant reproduction. Fertilization is the process where male and female gametes fuse together. After successful pollination, the stigma plays an active role by secreting nutrients. These nutrients are essential because they help the pollen grains germinate and grow. The pollen grains absorb these nutrients and start developing a pollen tube, which is a thin tube that grows downward. This tube acts like a passageway, guiding the pollen towards the ovule inside the ovary. Once the pollen tube reaches the ovule, it releases the male gamete into the ovule. This release leads to fertilization, where the male and female gametes fuse. The result of this fusion is the formation of a zygote, which will eventually develop into a new plant. This entire process highlights how fertilization is the key step that transforms reproductive cells into a new organism, connecting the dots in the cycle of plant life. Let's talk about fruit and seed formation. This process is essential for plant reproduction. It all begins with pollination, where pollen grains land on the stigma of a flower. From there, pollen tubes grow down the style toward the ovary, allowing sperm cells to reach the ovules. Once fertilization occurs, the ovules develop into seeds. Simultaneously, the surrounding ovary tissues often develop into fruit, which helps protect the seed and aids in dispersal. Understanding this process highlights how plants ensure their species continue and adapt across generations. It's a beautiful example of nature's intricate reproductive strategies. After fertilization, what happens is the ovary begins to enlarge and develop into the fruit. The wall of that ovary actually transforms into the fruit wall, which is quite fascinating. Meanwhile, the ovules inside the ovary turn into seeds. A single fruit can contain just one seed or multiple seeds, depending on the plant. As this process unfolds, the petals, sepals, and other flower parts typically dry up and fall away, since their job in reproduction is done. Now, it's important to remember that the fruit is essentially the seed-bearing part of the flowering plant, and it's the ripened ovary. The seed itself is the mature ovule, and it contains an embryo, which is the early stage of a new plant. The seed also has a protective coat around it, which shields the embryo as it develops. Finally, when conditions are right, the seed's embryo becomes active and starts growing into a new plant. That process is called germination. This entire sequence, from fertilization to seed development and finally germination, is fundamental to how flowering plants reproduce and continue their life cycle. Let's talk about seed dispersal. This is a crucial process for plant reproduction and survival. Essentially, seed dispersal helps plants spread their offspring across different areas, reducing competition and increasing their chances of thriving in new environments. There are various methods plants use to disperse their seeds, such as wind, animals, water, and even explosive mechanisms. Each method is an adaptation to specific environments and helps ensure the seeds reach suitable spots for growth. Highlighting this process reminds us how interconnected and dynamic ecosystems are. It also reinforces the overall theme of adaptation and survival strategies in nature. By understanding seed dispersal, we gain insight into how plant populations expand and sustain themselves over time. Now let's look at seed dispersal, which is the process by which seeds or fruits are spread out into new areas. This is a vital part of plant life cycles because it helps plants colonize new places and avoid competition with their parent plants. Dispersal can happen in several interesting ways. First, there's dispersal by explosion. Some plants, like pea plants, castor, and balsam, have mechanisms that cause their seeds to burst out forcefully when mature, propelling the seeds away from the parent plant. This explosive action helps spread the seeds over a wider area. Next, dispersal by water is common in plants like coconuts. Since coconuts are buoyant, they can float across water bodies to reach new shores, making water dispersal especially effective for plants near coastlines or rivers. Then there's dispersal by wind. Think of dandelions, drumsticks, and maples. They have lightweight seeds or structures that catch the breeze and carry the seeds far and wide. Wind dispersal is a very efficient way for plants to spread over large distances. Finally, dispersal by animals involves plants that have fleshy, often tasty fruits. Animals eat these fruits and later excrete the seeds at different locations, or sometimes seeds stick to their fur as they move around. This method helps plants reach new areas that might be otherwise difficult to access. Understanding these different mechanisms highlights how plants have evolved various strategies to ensure their seeds find suitable places to grow, which ties back to the overall theme of plant survival and adaptation.